The year is 1971. The Indian subcontinent is once again engulfed in the flames of war. But to understand this conflict, we must turn back the clock to 1947. The British Raj, after 2 centuries of dominance, had finally come to an end. However, the joy of independence was overshadowed by a painful partition. British India was divided into 2 new nations, India and Pakistan. This division was drawn along religious lines, with India being predominantly Hindu and Pakistan Muslim. The partition led to one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Millions of Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs were uprooted from their homes, crossing newly drawn borders in search of safety and belonging. This mass displacement was accompanied by horrific violence and bloodshed. Deep-seated animosity and mistrust were sown between the 2 newly formed nations. This poisoned the relationship from the start. The seeds of future conflict were sown in these early years. The most contentious issue was the fate of Kashmir. This princely state, with a Muslim-majority population but a Hindu ruler, became a flashpoint between India and Pakistan. Both countries claimed Kashmir, leading to the First Kashmir War in 1947. The war ended in a stalemate, with Kashmir divided between the 2 nations. However, the dispute remained unresolved, casting a long shadow over the subcontinent. The partition and its aftermath left deep scars on the psyche of both India and Pakistan. The 2 nations, born out of a shared colonial past, were now locked in a cycle of suspicion and hostility. The unresolved issues of Kashmir and the plight of religious minorities on both sides of the border served as constant reminders of the bitter legacy of partition. It was in this volatile environment that the seeds of the 1971 war were sown. As India and Pakistan grappled with the challenges of nation-building, a new crisis was brewing in East Pakistan. East Pakistan, geographically separated from West Pakistan by over 1,000 miles of Indian territory, was home to a predominantly Bengali population. The Bengalis of East Pakistan felt increasingly marginalized by the West Pakistani ruling elite. They faced discrimination in areas like representation in government, economic opportunities, and cultural recognition. The Bengali language movement of the 1950s, which demanded equal status for Bengali alongside Urdu, was a clear indication of the growing discontent. This resentment intensified in the following decades, culminating in the rise of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his Awami League. The Awami League advocated for greater autonomy for East Pakistan and a more equitable share of power within the Pakistani Federation. In the 1970 general election, the Awami League won a landslide victory, securing a majority in the Pakistani parliament. However, the West Pakistani establishment refused to accept the results. This denial of democratic rights sparked widespread protests and civil disobedience across East Pakistan. The Pakistani military responded with brutal force, cracking down on dissent and targeting Bengali civilians. The situation in East Pakistan quickly deteriorated into a full-blown humanitarian crisis. Millions of Bengalis fled their homes to escape the violence, seeking refuge in neighboring India. The influx of refugees placed a tremendous strain on India's resources and infrastructure. The world watched in horror as the atrocities committed by the Pakistani army were reported in international media. India, already sympathetic to the plight of the Bengalis, felt compelled to act. The situation in East Pakistan presented a complex dilemma for Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. On one hand, India had limited resources and was wary of getting dragged into a full-scale war with Pakistan. On the other hand, the humanitarian crisis unfolding across the border was impossible to ignore. The influx of refugees was straining India's resources and testing its conscience. Furthermore, India recognized the strategic implications of the situation in East Pakistan. The potential for a pro-India Bangladesh to emerge from the ashes of East Pakistan was an opportunity India could not afford to miss. A friendly Bangladesh would not only weaken Pakistan strategically, but also enhance India's standing in the region. After months of diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis peacefully failed, India made the fateful decision to intervene militarily. On December 3, 1971, in response to Pakistani airstrikes on Indian airfields, India officially declared war on Pakistan. The Indian military, better prepared and strategically positioned after months of anticipation, made rapid advances into East Pakistan. The Indian army, supported by the Mukti Bahini, the Bengali guerrilla force fighting for liberation, launched a three-pronged offensive. They aimed to capture Dhaka, the capital of East Pakistan, and liberate the region from Pakistani control. The Indian Air Force gained air superiority, effectively neutralizing the Pakistan Air Force in the east. The Indian Navy, too, played a crucial role, blockading East Pakistan and preventing reinforcements from reaching the beleaguered Pakistani forces. The 1971 war was a clash not just of armies, but also of ideologies and personalities. At the helm of each nation stood leaders who would shape the course of the conflict and its aftermath. Their decisions, driven by a blend of national interest, personal ambition, and political calculation, would have lasting consequences for the subcontinent. Indira Gandhi, India's Prime Minister, emerged as a decisive and steely leader on the world stage. Facing international pressure to exercise restraint, she nevertheless chose to back the Bangladesh liberation movement. Her gamble paid off. The swift victory in the war cemented her image as a strong leader and earned India significant geopolitical gains. On the other side stood General Yahya Khan, Pakistan's military ruler. His regime's brutal crackdown in East Pakistan and refusal to accept the Awami League's election victory had precipitated the crisis. His miscalculation of India's resolve and his military's flawed strategy led to Pakistan's devastating defeat. The war cost him not just East Pakistan, but also his own position of power. Caught in the middle of this maelstrom was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the charismatic leader of the Awami League. His vision of a Bangladesh free from oppression resonated deeply with the Bengali population. Imprisoned in Pakistan during the war, he became a potent symbol of Bengali resistance. His release after the war paved the way for him to become the founding father of Bangladesh. The 1971 war was a decisive victory for India and a crushing defeat for Pakistan. Within a fortnight, the Pakistani forces in East Pakistan were overwhelmed. On December 16, 1971, just 13 days after India's official entry into the war, Pakistan surrendered. This day marked not only the end of the war, but also the birth of a new nation, Bangladesh. The surrender instrument was signed in Dhaka by Lieutenant General Adak Niazi of Pakistan and Lieutenant General Jagit Singh Arora of India. Over 90,000 Pakistani soldiers were taken prisoner of war by the Indian Army. This was the largest surrender of any army since World War II. The war had resulted in significant casualties on both sides, with thousands of soldiers and civilians losing their lives. The creation of Bangladesh fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape of South Asia. Pakistan, once a formidable military power, was left fractured and humiliated. The loss of East Pakistan, and with it the Bengali population that constituted the majority of its citizens, dealt a severe blow to its national psyche and international standing. India, on the other hand, emerged from the war as the undisputed regional power. The decisive victory bolstered its military credentials and enhanced its stature on the global stage. The war also cemented India's image as a champion of liberation movements and a defender of democracy. However, the victory also brought with it new responsibilities and challenges for India in a region still grappling with the legacies of colonialism and partition. Section 6. A generation of Change the War's legacy. The 1971 war was more than just a military conflict. It was a watershed moment in the history of South Asia, with far-reaching consequences that continue to shape the region to this day. The war redefined the relationship between India and Pakistan, adding yet another layer of complexity to their already fraught history. It also gave birth to a new nation, Bangladesh, which has carved its own path in the decades since its tumultuous birth. For Bangladesh, the war was a triumph born of immense suffering. The birth of the new nation was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Bengali people and their struggle for self-determination. However, the legacy of the war, with its scars of violence and displacement, continued to cast a shadow over the fledgling nation. The challenges of rebuilding a war-torn country, establishing democratic institutions, and achieving economic progress were immense. The war also had a profound impact on the internal dynamics of both India and Pakistan. In India, the victory solidified Indira Gandhi's position as a formidable leader. It also highlighted the importance of military preparedness and strengthened the Indian military's position within the country's power structure. For Pakistan, the defeat led to a period of introspection and soul-searching. The loss of East Pakistan forced a reassessment of its national identity and foreign policy. The war also exposed the flaws in its military strategy and the inherent instability of a political system dominated by the military. The 1971 war, therefore, was not just a conflict confined to the battlefields. Its echoes reverberated through the corridors of power, the streets of cities and villages, and the lives of millions of people across South Asia. Section 7: India's rise, regional power and global ambitions. The 1971 war marked a turning point in India's post-independence trajectory. The decisive victory over Pakistan, a nation that had been seen as a military equal, catapulted India to the forefront of regional power dynamics. The war showcased India's military capabilities and its willingness to use them in defense of its interests. The liberation of Bangladesh, hailed as a victory for humanitarian intervention, significantly enhanced India's international standing. The war shattered the myth of Pakistan's invincibility and established India as the dominant power in South Asia. This newfound stature gave India greater leverage in regional affairs and bolstered its position on the global stage. The war also had a profound impact on India's domestic politics. Indira Gandhi's decisive leadership during the war made her a national icon. The victory solidified her position as a powerful leader and paved the way for her to implement a series of bold domestic reforms. The war also instilled a sense of national unity and pride, momentarily transcending the social and political divisions that often plagued India. However, India's rise as a regional power also brought new challenges. The country faced the daunting task of managing its relationships with its neighbors, many of whom viewed its growing influence with suspicion. The experience of the 1971 war also highlighted the importance of a strong military and a proactive foreign policy, shaping India's strategic outlook for decades to come. Section 8: Pakistan's trials, internal strife and shifting alliances. The 1971 war was a catastrophe for Pakistan. The loss of East Pakistan and the humiliating military defeat sent shockwaves through the nation. The war shattered the myth of Pakistan's invincibility and exposed the deep fault lines within its society and its body politic. The war's aftermath was a period of profound introspection, political upheaval, and shifting alliances. The immediate consequence of the defeat was the collapse of the military regime of General Yahya Khan. The war had exposed the flaws in the military strategy and eroded its credibility. The Hamudur Rahman Commission, set up to investigate the causes of the defeat, highlighted the failures of leadership and the deep divisions within the military establishment. The war also led to a reassessment of Pakistan's national identity and its place in the world. The loss of East Pakistan, with its Bengali population that constituted the majority of its citizens, forced Pakistan to confront the question of what it meant to be a nation. The two-nation theory, which had formed the basis of Pakistan's creation, lay in tatters. In the aftermath of the war, Pakistan embarked on a path of rebuilding its shattered economy and restoring its international image. The country sought new alliances, moving closer to the United States and China. The war also led to a strengthening of the country's nuclear ambitions, driven by a desire to never again experience the humiliation of 1971. Section 9: Echoes of 1971, a lasting impact on South Asia. The echoes of the 1971 war continue to reverberate through South Asia, shaping the region's geopolitical landscape and influencing the relations between India and Pakistan. The war left an indelible mark on the psyche of both nations, casting a long shadow over their interactions. The unresolved issues of the past, coupled with the legacy of mistrust and animosity, have hampered efforts at achieving lasting peace. The war also highlighted the enduring challenge of religious nationalism in South Asia. The two-nation theory, which underpinned the partition of British India and the creation of Pakistan, was severely tested and ultimately discredited by the events of 1971. However, the forces of religious extremism and intolerance have continued to pose a threat to the region's stability. The 1971 war also underscored the importance of regional cooperation in South Asia. The war demonstrated the devastating consequences of conflict and the need for peaceful resolution of disputes. However, efforts at regional integration have been hampered by the lingering mistrust between India and Pakistan and the complex interplay of domestic politics and regional dynamics. As South Asia moves forward, the lessons of 1971 serve as a reminder of the importance of dialogue, reconciliation, and a shared commitment to peace and prosperity. The legacy of the war, with its triumphs and tragedies, should guide the region's leaders and its people towards a future where the shadow of conflict no longer darkens the horizon.